Hey, how's it going? It's Danny, and I'm back with Mostly Grounded 4. Today's topic coming up again, from a thread I found on Reddit. Things you thought that were normal, but were bipolar signs. So, it's a great topic, interesting, and I have a lot of experience in this area. Um, when I look back to when I was 16, when I was diagnosed, which was 40 years ago, don't mind me, I'm sitting outside, by the way. It's beautiful evening, beautiful kind of late summer New England evening here in Massachusetts. So I'm sitting outside because it's lovely. My neighbor just pulled into their driveway. We live in a condo. Um, so when I look back to when I was 16 in high school, there were a lot of signs that pointed to bipolar disorder. Now, back then in 1986, people weren't talking about bipolar disorder. There weren't as many books that were readily available or publications that I knew about, at least as a kid, that really talked about signs, symptoms, ways to know if this is something that you could actually have, you could have a problem with. Um, for me, the earliest signs were mania. I was in an arts high school studying theater, and I was so passionate about my craft, about my acting and theater in general. And I would spend late nights staying up, memorizing lines, practicing monologues, practicing dialogue for sketches or whatever, for scenes I was working on from a show, or maybe just doing a scene study performance in school, whatever. But I spent many, many late nights and even endless nights without sleep, staying up and studying, and memorizing and trying to perfect my performance. And for me, perfectionism it's interesting because it's kind of a duality. Pardon me with the stuttering. I have a little stutter sometimes. It's a duality for me because there's the stuff with alcoholism and addiction and perfectionism that goes with that, but also for me with the bipolar disorder, with the desire to have everything be just right, 100%, the right way it's supposed to be, which of course is never possible. So there's a degree of struggle, there's a degree of insanity and frustration that comes with that expectation. When you strive to make everything perfect and it can't be perfect because perfect doesn't exist, then you live with this, as a bipolar person, you live with this sense of angst and frustration and anger. And anger was something else that came on for me early on in high school. I was angry with my mom a lot. Now, I was a teenager. I was 16 years old. It was kind of typical teenage stuff as well, but there was also a lot of rage. And a lot of that was tied into my bipolar disorder. A lot of it was tied into my anxiety, my my false sense of entitlement, and my expectations, which tied into my perfectionism. So that's one aspect I think that really covers that topic. I think also other signs were deep plummeting depression as a result of things not going the way I wanted them to go. For me, the mania began as excitement, as thrills, as, jubilation, as like this sense that I had found my people, I had found my tribe. I came from this really, really desolate, barren island in the Burbank Unified School District where there was no theater that was really satisfactory, and that was really, that satisfied me, that really gave me that joy, that thrill that the arts high school theater department gave me. So I felt like I'd found my place in life, which, at 16 years old, that's a huge deal. And I had been unsteady, been ungrounded all those years prior. And so there was this incredible kind of like steep acceleration and sort of like racing uphill of becoming this new person, this new guy who was in the arts high school, who was welcomed, who was accepted, and who was a part of. And then, because I didn't sleep, because I was running around and being manic and trying to be God and trying to control the universe and be everybody's best friend, throw all the big parties, do all the things I needed to do to run around and make everybody like me and be parts of all the cliques and fit in with everybody in the school. It was exhausting, and ultimately ended me with a deep depression. And that's before I went into the hospital. The depression that lasted for 9 months, ultimately did not sleep, and was catatonic, was like a zombie, walking into, kind of shuffling along in the hall, in King Hall, where my high school was located at. That was the name of the hall at LA College, Cal State LA, sorry. And I was like a zombie, man. I was in a bad way. And those were the early signs that something was really, really wrong. And nobody knew. My mom knew something was up. She had me seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist who diagnosed me as bipolar. But before I saw the psychiatrist, I was doing the bipolar boogie in high school. And honestly, when I go back further to like elementary school and experiences with disappointment and with jubilation and thrills and excitement, very much these manic bursts of energy, of excitement, of joy, of creative writing, and of doing theater, doing acting, performing little skits for my family, and then plummeting, man, just sinking down into a place of darkness and void and emptiness and aloneness and loneliness, as a result of things not going my way. The mania and the depression really do this dance with each other, for me. And the depression is certainly tied into the disappointment of the mania not giving me what I hoped to get, Knock on wood, this is wood back here, I haven't been manic for decades. I've been hypomanic a lot. I still, even like within the last week, I've been hypomanic. But I haven't been manic, which is great. So, there's a lot I could share about on this topic, and I could write about it too. Maybe I'll put it in my newsletter. But it's interesting stuff. If you are struggling with bipolar disorder, or you think you might be struggling with something that could be bipolar disorder or some other mental health condition, please reach out to a licensed psychiatrist and do the footwork you need to do to find out if this is something that you need to get help with. Get on meds and find a lifestyle that works for you while living with this stuff. It's not impossible. It's totally doable and plausible and livable, and I have a life that's joyful and wonderful in so many ways, and I'm blessed and I'm grateful, and you can have that too. So that is today's Mostly Grounded episode 4. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.